Hi, everybody. Welcome to the program. Very special show today because we learn things here. So, we're all about the education, the information, trying to get better a little bit every day. And along this journey of podcasting, you meet some incredibly unique people that do some incredibly unique things. And we've been fortunate enough over the past couple of years to partner with some incredible people who do those incredible things. Lost on a lot of people in their chase for revenue and their desire to be successful, captains of industry is outsourcing. Lost on a lot of people is the pride in Canadian manufacturing. And one of our partners at the Dean Blundell Show is super proud of Canada, super proud of his expertise, 20 years of it in an area that is so niche and difficult to understand. That includes science, power, batteries, physics, and it's so specific that it's difficult for people like me to have conversations like him. And thank God he speaks plain English, even though he's bright and he owns one of the biggest tool making shops in the world. Please welcome to the program the owner of Cantork. Go to cantork.com today. The makers of rugged, hardworking torque wrenches, bolting solution experts, 20 years of it around the world. Proudly Canadian. Colin Livingstone, the owner, operator, founder. Look at that. Look at you. Look at you. Look at me.
Hey, man.
How are you, buddy?
It's another day in paradise. Good to see you again.
Is Edmonton paradise these days? Is that what they're calling it? Livingstone?
Absolutely. I mean, dude, it's like, been melting here this week.
Yeah.
Coming out of the minus 40 stint that we had. It's great. Loving it.
Good, dude. Edmonton. I was in Alberta I think 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
and
thanks for giving me a call.
Well, I was in Calgary. I wasn't even in Edmonton. Like if I was in Edmonton, I would have come to see you. But I was in Calgary, and I'm like, man, no one here's in the kind of rush people are in Toronto. You know what I mean? Like you, and everybody's willing to help you out west in Alberta. It's a beautiful place. I mean, sure, you imported Tucker Carlson for a couple of shows the other day, but
I did not.
Did you go?
The answer to both is I most certainly did not. No, 100% no. Yeah.
Woo! Some of the pictures that are going around of like with Jordan Peterson and Danielle Smith and Conrad Black, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of criminals in that picture.
Didn't know you could stack shit that high.
Anyway, Alberta's a beautiful province. I mean, hey, listen, forget about ideologies, forget about that. That is the most rugged, hard-working province in the country. Where you shake a man's hand in Alberta, if you're from out west, you shake a man's hand. I've shook your hand before. Those are working hands. You're like, oh, that's a real man. He has calluses.
Not salesman hands, but yeah, they're metaphoric calluses for sure.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful place. Let's talk about Cantork. What is Cantork?
So we are from our start to where we are now has been a big evolution. We originally started technically October 26, 2000 was the day I got fired from my job. Had a 1-year-old son at home, had very little savings, and had to try and figure out how I was going to survive. Literally went into survival mode, made a couple of phone calls later on that day. And by, literally by lunchtime, I had 6 suppliers willing to sell me product on credit. Although I didn't have a business, I didn't know how to start a business. I didn't know how to do the filing. Like I had no clue. I just knew that, what I was doing for my previous employer worked out really well, and that I should be able to, do the same thing for myself. What we are now is a designer and manufacturer of industrial torque tools or assembly tools. So we basically make things to put things together and take them apart if they have threaded fasteners. So a threaded fastener is really simply a stud or really a bolt. And we provide tools and we produce tools to tighten and loosen basically nuts and bolts. That's the short version of what we do.
Yeah, but you don't walk into something like that. Colin Livingstone, the founder, owner, operator of Cantork, makers of rugged, hardworking torque wrenches, joins us today. They're Canada's leading industrial tool experts. You don't grow up going, I want to be a tool expert, right? That was out of desperation. That was like you find yourself on the outside looking in one day, And this is the business. You're in the business of selling tools, right? That was your job. You were a tool salesman, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was in this industry, and this is I was selling and renting these things, but as a kid, I always wanted to know what was happening inside the fence. So I grew up in a small town called Stony Plain. It's not quite as small as it used to be, just outside city of Edmonton. And just west of town, within half an hour, were a number of coal mines. So we would get out, driving out to somewhere, and I'd see these coal mines from the highway, and I'd see these great big drag lines, and I had no idea what they were. I had no idea what they were doing, and all my relatives could ever tell me was that, well, that's a coal mine, but what are they doing? How does that thing work? What's going on? Or when I would drive around the city, we've got a number of refineries in town, and we've got more refineries, just north of town in Fort Saskatchewan. I would see these things, billowing, smoke and steam, and have no idea what was going on, but I always wanted to know what was happening on the inside, or when I drove past a power plant. So did I dream of being a hydraulic tool manufacturer as a kid? No, but I'm really getting to do the thing I love to do and I always wanted to do, even though I didn't know that it was a thing, by getting to go into all these places, and help with the maintenance or the construction or what have you of these industrial plants, whether it's petrochemical, whether it's power, pipeline, marine, and what's really cool is now we're starting to get a really strong foothold internationally. So we've got quite a bit of stuff happening in the Middle East. We've done some major projects in Europe and northern Germany. But yeah, for a kid from a really small town, to be able to say that without hesitation, I'll fly 120 or 130,000 miles a year, somewhat for racing, but mostly for the business, is still pretty cool.
Oh, dude, it's a cool story. I mean, out of desperation, because there's two different things here. I want to talk about your torque wrenches and your company, but I also want to talk about that moment where you realize, okay, I'm out of a job, right? Because this is
Yeah.
relational shit. Like, there are a lot of men that are going through this time in their lives where they are 20, 30, 40 years old. They thought they were going to do something for a long period of time. Rug gets pulled out from underneath them, and they move to the blame game as opposed to move to the, I need to pick up the phone and get on this game. Like, was there a moment at all? Because I know you and I know you're a go-getter, so it's a little bit different. And so this question's sort of rhetorical. But was there a moment at all where you're like, what do I do? Or did you like, how did you summon? Did you just realize I don't have a choice?
No, when I got fired, it was very unexpected. The company I worked for, who I don't want to mention, I actually have a really decent relationship with them now, but it's taken a number of years to kind of mend what happened. But my firing came very unexpectedly. I was one of the top producers in the company. My office outperformed the head office as far as the total number of profit dollars that we generated. Our gross profit was remarkable. So I had no inkling whatsoever that my days were numbered there. When I showed up at the office, the president of the company was in the office, in my personal office at my desk, and I knew the second I pulled up, when I saw him sitting there, I knew my days were, like, I knew I was done. I didn't know why,
Yeah.
but the only reason that he would have flown from Quebec to be in my office without talking to me first was to axe me. So,
Give you the
um,
pump. That's a
it was,
terrible feeling too. If anybody's ever walked in their office, because that's happened to me, and their boss is there, and you're like, "Oh, this can't be good."
yeah. Well, uh, we went through. It was a really quick exchange. He handed me a letter and he says, "I want you to read this." And I won't get this verbatim. I have it somewhere in my files, but it says, "Due to differences in managerial direction, we've decided to terminate your employment as of this date. Blah 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 blah. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." That was it. And I had this shit-eating grin. I had this smile on my face, and I had no idea why. But as he handed it to me, he gave me my last pay, my last commission check, and my vacation pay, which they're legally required to do.
Mhm.
But he screwed me on a bonus I was supposed to get. Okay, fine. I
Well, there's
said,
why you got fired.
Oh, yeah,
That bonus was
100%.
his,
Yeah,
dude.
well, what they lost far exceeds what they could have spent that day. But anyway, that turned into a really, really excellent motivator for a lot of future fuckery that got dealt to him. But um, he made an accusation and he said, we can't put this in the letter, but we received copies of your emails and your text messages that were accidentally attached to your expense reports, speaking in a derogatory manner about the management of the company. And I said, without any hesitation, I said, show them to me. Well, I don't have them with me and I'm not prepared to do that. I said, Jim, they don't exist. He says, well, we have them. I said, Jim, they don't exist. I said, first of all, you don't print out email. Now, he was 75 years old at the time, so email was still a pretty new concept. But I said, like, if I had done the thing that you're accusing me of, I would be coming up with an excuse. But my initial reaction, being blindsided, is show it to me because there's got to be some misunderstanding. And he wouldn't do it. So I said, Jim, at the end of the day, I've said to you from day one, if you don't want me here, then I don't need to be here. And that's all you ever had to say.
Mhm.
I said, you're going to know if I was doing my job if your office is here in 2 years. If your office is here in 2 years, then that means the work that I've done up till this point has generated enough momentum to get you to the end. I said, anything after that is not my responsibility. But if your office doesn't make it that long, then you'll know I wasn't doing my job. And, they're still in business here to this day. From that moment, I didn't have a vehicle. I was driving a company car. I didn't have a cell phone. I had a company cell phone. I had one of my, he was an employee, but I had one of the shop guys get into one of the company vehicles and drive me home. So as I was driving, I said, I need you to make 2 stops for me. He's okay. So we stopped at a gas station. It was a Petro-Canada, just west of Calgary Trail on 51st Ave. And I made a phone call from a payphone to a supplier. And I said, hey, you won't guess what happened. I got fired. They immediately jumped to and said, yeah, we'll support you with tools. I stopped and saw my father-in-law who owned a automotive manufacturing business and said, hey, I just got fired. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know, but I think I'm going to try and do it on my own. And he kept saying, like, you seem to be taking it very well. Because again, I was just smiling and I didn't know what it was. It took me a long time to figure out that having the feeling of resistance, I had to do everything like I was swimming against the current. I had to fight these guys with everything. I had to challenge everything. And we did so well that they should have just kind of turned over give me a little bit more carte blanche. But their business, they could run it however they wanted. But all of a sudden I started like losing all that inhibition. I had all
All the
that
stress and anxiety of the fight that you knew
gone.
you had to have every time you tried to do something right. There's so many people that were in that position that when they get pumped, they go like this. Well, what do I do now? Why do I feel so good though?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that's, really that should have been when I was the most stressed out, but that's when I'm kind of built opposite of most people that I tend to rise at every challenge and I tend to fall away at the general stuff,
Yeah.
People get excited for Christmas. I don't care at all about Christmas. People get excited to do this family thing. I don't really care. But when, the building's on fire, there's a problem with the thing okay, no problem. We'll deal with it. Like I just had my passport was lost by FedEx here the other day. And I use my passport more than most people. And I'm telling the story to a handful of friends and family. And they're like, why aren't you more like, you should be flipping out? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I just order a new one and it's done. I've just kind of built, backwards of most
So
people.
you're good in life cratering situations, but give you the wrong McFlurry, you lose your mind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, do something in traffic that actually has no effect on me, and I can go on a profanity-laced tirade for
Waste
15
an hour
minutes.
chasing the guy down. Yeah, dude, we've all
No,
been there. No,
no, no,
I've
no, no,
done that.
no. I'm a responsible driver, but I can't say there haven't been a couple of moments that but at the end of people don't know who I am, and I'm not saying I'm anything special, but I'm a race car driver. I
Yeah.
know how to handle a vehicle in really extreme situations. You're not going to beat me on the road in any contest whatsoever. Like if you want to start playing games, it's going to be very embarrassing. Anyway,
Yes.
I don't need to talk about my criminal past, but
That's that, dude. This is podcast 1. We can't do that till like podcast 12. We got to endear
oh,
yourself to people before you talk about your criminal road raid past. We
well,
have
this
to.
is like the 4th or 5th time I've done the Dean Blundell show, and I've got my own
This
little
is like,
thing. So
yeah, I know. It's just, we're leaning into some content about Cantor, but I'm
well,
also
we can
want
do
to
that.
talk about like what it takes for a dude, and he's got a 1-year-old, and he's like, I need to fucking do this. Like, I need to figure it out because you mentioned things about responding, like in situations like that where you get put out, it is unfair. Guy just wants your bonus, he wants you to get out. You can do too good of a job. There is such a thing, by the way. So, but in situations like that, a lot of people turn themselves into the victim, right? And you had the ability to literally turn, focus on what you had to do and go do it, as opposed to sitting there going, how am I going to get back at those guys, right? And there are so many people. I'm sure you're an employer of a bunch of people. You see that, where a guy loses his gig and he's like, forget it. The world's out for me.
Yeah.
You didn't do that, which is why you own Cantork, which is one of the world's leading industrial tool experts. You were able to do it in 20 years. Was that because you weren't resentful, or you're smart enough to be able to focus on, hey, listen, none of that matters. I got to feed my family.
It's honestly, I'm an idiot. I don't have smarts. Like, no, but smart people cure cancer. Smart people put rockets into space. I'm not that. I'm pretty clever and I'm moderately quick-witted, but I maybe, I don't know if it's an ability or if I don't get distracted by things that don't matter. So when we get into a situation that's problematic, it doesn't really seem to phase me because there's kind of one path that I can see, or maybe, a couple of options, but only one that makes sense. So we just start going down that road.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not built again like a lot of people where before they make a big life decision, they've got to sit back and they've got to think and they've got to process and they want to, I'm not saying that's wrong. I want to be really crystal clear. That's just not how I'm built. It's that, okay, this bad thing happened, so we got to respond. This bad thing happened, we've got to find a new way to do it. Like that's all there is to it. So that still applies. We've got problems with our tools. Like we make great torque wrenches, but there's things that still go wrong. So we want to fix them. It doesn't mean take the whole, throw out the baby with the bathwater. We just need to go back. We talk to an engineer. We talk to our production people. Hey, here's this problem. What do you suggest? Well, we can try it this way. Okay, let's try it that way. Let's try it this way. We move on. Like
Well, but you're in an industry too, though, dude, like where you're testing products all the time. You're coming up with solutions. And when you test products as you're testing them, and we'll get to some of these products in just a second, failure is the goal, right? You test to failure. And
yes,
when it comes to the personality that you have, it's a direct indicator of the business you're in, where you're like, let's just see how much. Like, dude, you drive carts. You're a race car driver. It's what you do in your spare time. You're part of the Alex Tagliani Pinty's racing team. Those like fire suits, they're not jokes. You're for
no,
real.
they're not
Not, you
props.
know what I mean? And then that's my point, is
Yeah.
that the goal is to test to failure. Isn't that, though, like the advice? You've got sons, you've got employees. Isn't that the advice you kind of gave yourself in that moment? And isn't that the advice you give to young people, where it's like, no, you never stop. When you fail, you keep going, whether it's your failure or someone else has impugned that failure on you. Your job is to contest a failure again and again and again, so you can learn how to get on top of shit.
More than anything, because I also have to be aware that there's multiple personalities out there. So the way that I tell my son who works within the business, the way that we talk about a problem or a mistake that was made is different than the way I talk to my administrative person. My administrator is conflict, like not even adverse. Like she's so opposed to conflict that it's an absolutely different way that I talk to her instead of the way I talk to other people. But more than anything, when there's a problem in my older life, before I sought a lot of counseling and did a lot of work on myself, all I'd want to do is like hammer on the problem and you made a mistake and so on and so forth. But
Sure.
now the way that I try and handle things is to be able to say like, okay, look, this didn't happen the way we wanted it to. Where did we have a miscommunication? Did I not illustrate, or did I not identify the objectives properly? Or is this something that you maybe did wrong? just so that we know how to prevent that in the future. It's not, I can't implement the way that I would handle something on someone else, because the different personalities just don't deal with that the same way. But um, if nothing else, we don't generally make big deals about things until they really need to be made. Like if somebody's insulting, if somebody's disrespectful, if somebody's manipulative, that doesn't get handled as politely as we genuinely sent something to the wrong place, or we sent out the wrong tool and we had to fix it. Yeah, if I get the feeling that people are either rude or manipulative, yeah, that doesn't get handled very, very smoothly.
Oh, you're one of those guys where you're like, "Hey, I've just got this thing about assholes, and if you're an asshole to me, I'm just gonna take all the guardrails off. We'll see how it
Again, if
goes."
it's manipulative, or if I feel like, we
Yeah.
get, from time to time, we'll get a customer, again, won't mention anyone by name, but like they'll rent something from us. They'll have it for 2 weeks. They'll come to us and say, "Oh, we just went to use this for the first time, and there's a problem." It's like, okay, well, you've had it for 2 weeks. Yeah, well, it just sat there. Okay, but then we get them, because we've got like hour meters on our pump, so we know when that thing got turned on. Send it back to us. We'll take a look. It's like, well, there's 5 hours on this thing since we sent it out to you. So how did it happen the way you said it did? Oh, well, that's what the guys told me. It's like, well, now, yeah, now
Yeah, you're lying.
you're lying to us. So the way that we're going to respond to that is going to be different. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to lie. Tell us what the problem is. If it's our fault, we fix it. If it's your fault, you pay for it. We still fix it. Just if you're starting out by lying to try and get what you want instead of admitting what the situation is, that's a very different thing.
How important is that when you start your own business, telling the truth, right? Just
Uh,
like the accountability portion of that.
I,
It's
I
everything.
couldn't do it any other way. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, and that's dude, and that's the thing. This is why I love doing this podcast. I was just thinking about it when I was sitting here listening to you. I'm like, man, we're talking about resilience, we're talking about trust, we're talking about brands you can trust, right? Which is really in your industry the most important thing. Like you are incredibly niche, and I want to get to some of the stuff that you do right now. This is the cantork.com website, brand new website, which you can check it out, cantork.com. Makers of rugged, hardworking torque wrenches. I say it all the time. Tool rentals, calibration, services, repairs, custom fabrication. So you guys make these tools for very specific purposes for industries around the world. Um, Give me some of those industries, and then let's talk about some of the tools.
Okay. Again, our stuff is stupid. It doesn't care where it's working. It doesn't care what it's doing. We've got, half a dozen main product types, which in turn have a bunch of subtypes. But we specialize in providing things to tighten and loosen industrial fasteners. So a fastener is just, what most people would think of as a bolt.
Mhm.
In the majority of our cases, we work on studs. The difference between a stud and a bolt is a stud is just thread the whole way through. There's no head on it. So a stud will have two nuts. A bolt only has one nut because it's got a built-in nut on the head. And then from there, we make, like you're showing right now, the CT series. So CT for our tools, comparing back to like automotive technology, these are what we call square drive tools, and they're the equivalent of a pickup truck. They're general duty, they're wide application, and they can do a lot of different things with very little adaptation. So by putting, 1 inch socket on that thing one day, or putting a 3 1/8 inch socket on it the next day, it's got this big spread, and can do a lot of work in a really small package. We make these tools starting at about 100 foot-pounds up to 60,000 foot-pounds, which is an awful lot of power. But yeah, this is kind of our flagship type tool.
Bread and butter. That's your tool. That's what you. Yeah. Okay. And like, are you using these in nuclear reactors? Are you using these in railroad, forestry, heavy machinery? Like who's using these? Who do you spec these for?
Again, it's industry. There's not one that stands out over the others, but we supply these often to heavy equipment dealers. So the Caterpillar, John Deere, Hitachi. They use these for working on what they call grousers, the track pads on the big tracked shovels and excavators and things like that. These often go into power generation, lots in refining, but then we have another type of hydraulic wrench that's more specialized that kind of fits into tighter places. So in a lot of cases, when it comes to drilling, when it comes to some of the refinery applications, you need a thinner tool, and that's what our RT series handles. It tends to be a little bit lighter. It's a lot thinner, but to do a multitude of sizes is far more expensive. So there's a time and place for everything. Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah, that's on the front page of your website. This is the RT series hydraulic actuator.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
that's what it is. Right?
Yeah, dude. I've been through it. I like your website. And it's a new website where anybody can go to cantorque.com, check out any one of their products, whether it's something from the CT series, RT series, which we just talked about, which is sort of your bread and butter. But I want to get to some of these because they come with great pictures, and you know me, I like pictures. You've got some incredible industries that not many people think of, like tunnel industries, like boring industries, right?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because I find that to be fascinating too. Is not just what you make, these tools for, these torque wrenches for, which is highly specialized, but like some of the jobs that you're getting tagged in on, like tunneling, must be fascinating.
Yeah, that was the square drive tool, the CT tool, that we got contracted by a local company, or an out of town company who was doing a local project. And yeah, we supplied that picture right there. We supplied one of our 1-inch square drive tools. They had tried 3 competitor tools and couldn't get the load that they needed to loosen these things off. And I'm not going to say why, but our tool has a couple of hidden features that allow us to generate more torque at the same rating. So a competitor's tool might be rated at 3,000 foot-pounds, but they're not actually delivering full 3,000 foot-pounds at the drive. They're doing it kind of at the power side, just like your car might make 300 horsepower, but you're not getting 300 to the wheels. We've got some tricks that we use that actually gets the power to the output drive. But to be able to work on a tunnel boring machine was really, really, really cool, because as you mentioned before, like, this is the same kind of stuff that was used to build the tunnel. I think this is what Gothenburg Tunnel in Sweden, Switzerland, wherever that is. This is what they use to tunnel through mountains. This is what this was being used for part of the underground LRT system that we're expanding here in Edmonton. So to be able to play, really, it's a very, very small part, but to say that we're part of it is eternally cool.
Oh, dude, it's super cool. Doesn't stop there. I want to talk about the VXB battery powered nut runner. I just love the name, by the way. I don't know if you named it yourself. Sounds like you did.
Which part, the VXB part or the nut runner?
Nut runner. Yeah, the nut runner.
No, nut runner is a generic term for a tool that continuously turns.
What a cool industry, nut runner. It's a generic term.
This is kind of cool, because we take essentially battery motors that you would use on a cordless drill or a cordless impact wrench, and modify it by putting a gearbox on the end. So instead of taking a little impact driver that can maybe put out, I don't know, 20 or 30 foot-pounds, maybe not even that much, we've got 4 main models that will generate up to 3,000 foot-pounds. So 3,000 foot-pounds is a number, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But let's say the average man,
like, I could use this to put together IKEA furniture. It would take me no time at all, is what you're saying.
That is not what I'm saying. Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, you wouldn't want to use this on the Kugel or the Kisis, as they say in Deadpool. But an average person can pick up about 100 pounds. So if you put your full force on a 1 foot long bar, that's in essence 100 foot-pounds.
Yeah.
So 100 pounds of force on a 1 foot lever. This is the equivalent to the average person pulling as hard as they can on a 30 foot bar. And that's also factoring that the bar has no weight, that we're pretty much in space and all the rest of it. So it's an extremely powerful tool in a
Mhm.
very small package. It only weighs about 15 pounds.
Yeah, dude, it's incredible. I mean, basically what you're doing is you're souping up torque wrenches. Like you're like the aftermarket guy for torque wrenches and tools, right? That's what Can Torque does. Um, I want to let you go here in a minute because I want to talk more about a couple other things as we continue this series and get to know Can Torque. Give people a look under the hood of a business you can trust that is in Canada. How important was it for you to bring manufacturing back to Canada a couple of years ago?
Well, it was, yeah, it's very easy to be, congratulatory,
Good one.
for, for these kinds of things. But it was also very selfish because I know categorically, Canada is a very, very difficult country in which to do business. Now, not just, I'm not talking politically, but from a physical and a geographic standpoint, what we do here is not easy. When we build a pipeline, you've got to cross rivers, you've got to go through prairie, you've got to go through mountains, you've got to survive, down to -40. We get as hot as +40. It's a very, very, very difficult environment to do anything in. So we've developed a lot of technology, and we have a lot of really, really, really smart people who, the manufacturing base here in Edmonton is unrivaled. I shouldn't there's nowhere better than what we have here in Edmonton. So there's
Yeah,
tons of
Edmonton is like people don't understand this. All around Edmonton, in Edmonton, Fort McMurray. I mean, manufacturing and the people that need to test and use tools like yours. Like it's ridiculous and the idea that more people aren't doing what you're doing and bringing all their manufacturing for that industry into that province because I mean, you've got a beta test every time you turn around, right? Like, you have the ability to put these things in the hands of people who truly need it, number one. But like your background, your backyard is a playground for your industry.
We've got virtually every industry within a few minutes of my office where we could test a particular thing in a very specific application. But the the manufacturing that happens here is not simple manufacturing. It's very complicated, from downhole tools to motors to countless other industries. So the local machining community, we've got really good supply lines. So we get very good materials. We've got people that can bring in super exotic materials, but we've got people here who know how to work with them. So when we first started, when I really moved away from being a distributor and started down the road of manufacturing, we went through an intermediary step where we had other companies building tools but putting our name on them,
Mhm.
which was great, but it was also terrible because we had no control on how these tools were made. And when those tools failed, it was our responsibility, even though we didn't actually design it, we didn't actually make it, but the customer didn't care because it said Cantork on the side,
Mm.
which led us to the next step where we had to start doing the manufacturing ourselves. And through the process, we've had tools made in India, we've had tools made in China, we've had tools made in Europe. And then the big deal was when we have those partnerships in place, I was having to fly and visit the production facility to make sure things were being built properly and to make sure that things were online, and to answer questions in real time is a whole lot easier than somebody sending a poorly worded email that's got a strange translation to it that doesn't make sense, and we go back and forth for 3 or 4 days. Or I could get on a plane and be in the factory in under 24 hours. But once we started taking a look and started talking to some of the local companies, of course the first question that we have is, well, what's it going to cost? Well, things are going to be more money here. Well, not necessarily, because material is a spot price. So if you take a particular grade of steel and you buy it in Edmonton, it's going to be about the same price in Manhattan as it is in Bombay, as it is in Beijing, as it is in Germany, because that's what that material sells for, on that day.
Mhm.
It goes into a machine. Almost all of our stuff and anyone's stuff that's made now uses what's called CNC, computer numeric control. So it gets a program, the machine runs a program, and you end up with a finished product. Well, the machines that we use here, the machines they use in Taiwan, the machines they use everywhere, it takes about the same amount of time. We don't have a big labor component to, the assembly of our tool. We can build a tool and, I could build, I've done it before. I could build like 20 tools in half an hour. So the amount of labor we put in is virtually none. So the pricing is pretty similar. The only times you can find that the overseas stuff is going to work out cheaper is when they use inferior materials, they use an inferior design, or they cut some other corner.
And
That's
don't tell you about it until after you try it and it breaks.
or you don't know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
most of the people that go down that road, they aren't manufacturers. They haven't, I've wasted millions of dollars making mistakes, trying to figure out heat treating, trying to figure out different production methods, whether we want to, use a mill, use a wire EDM, use a laser cutter, use a plasma cutter. There's a bazillion combinations that you can use, and trying to figure things out. We made so many mistakes in the very beginning, and the very beginning was like 5 years, and literally millions of dollars just gone to get to where we're at now, where we've got a much better idea of like, okay, for this tool, this is how we're going to make it. We need this material, we need this finish. That's it. There's no other way to do it. Once we started bringing that in and started the development, and started to develop our own local manufacturing, we haven't looked back, because the costs, yeah, they're a little bit more per piece, but I don't have to fly to Europe to oversee it. We don't have the crazy freight costs. We don't have to do a bunch of sea freight with, all the logistics.
Well, sea freight's gone up like 3-4 times, right? Like
It's up and down. Now
Yeah.
sea freight is like, I probably get 10 emails a day just from overseas, freight brokers. Like, hey, do you have anything coming from Shanghai? Do you like there's tons of availability. But if there's an issue now, I can get my vehicle, I can drive within half an hour, and I can be at the machine shop. And now we're pretty excited because we've started adding our own machines within our own building here. So we're going to start making certain components in-house. So,
Wow.
Even with that, you come for a visit, I'm going to be able to put a, piece of material on a machine or on various machines, walk you through and say, okay, it's going to take half an hour, but this is going to be start to finish. And when we're done, this is going to be whatever it is. But anyway, like, we can take people and we can show them what we're doing. Or we have a customer in the building says, well, I've always liked your this, but can you change it like that? Sure. Change the drawing, put material in the machine. We could be, cutting same day.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, dude, and everybody's chasing margins, right? You're chasing excellence. It's what you do at Cantork. You've been doing it for 20 years. You're super proud of the people that you work with. This is a family-owned and operated business. It is out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. You do business around the world, fiercely and proudly Canadian. It's one of the things I love about you and your website, too. I just want to bring this up. You can have a look at the front page of his website if you go to cantork.com, and you can see that beautiful torque wrench. Is that from the RT series? I believe it is.
That is the RT series. Yes,
It
sir.
sure is. You're welcome for the education I got. And it's this little emblem you put on your casing. It's this little emblem. It's like, hey man, we want you to know that we did this here. We're proud of this country, and we're smart about the way we do things. Might cost a little bit more, but what's more is that it's in your backyard and you've taken control. And you do this around the world. You're one of the most trusted brands in the tool making industry. I want to thank you for your time. We're going to get to know Colin over the next little bit. You can visit everything he does at cantork.com. Check out his podcast. It's called Talking Torque. You can get everything, including his podcast, and talk to him about maybe becoming a distributor. Hey, dude, if this doesn't go well, I have no problem selling the world's greatest torque wrenches for my friend Colin. I just want to let you know that.
That's perfect. Yeah, we got a couple of power stations within a few minutes of your house. So, just get on the 401. What is it? 10, 15 minutes east towards Oshawa, and
head out to Clarington, dude. Bowmanville. I'll do whatever you need me to do. I'm your
race cars. Then we do some torque wrenches.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
It's all good.
Also, a partner in the Tagliani racing team, Cantork. Colin races karts. We're going to get to that in a couple of podcasts as well. He's a well-rounded man. He's a Renaissance man, and he breaks more golf clubs than me. No, dude, you look good. Your hair looks on point too. You look really good.
Would you say majestic? I've heard that term, a few times.
It flows. You're like me, where you're mixing in a little brown with some Arctic gold.
Yeah,
It flows.
yeah,
Yeah, you look
these
good.
are not, these were not
Highlights?
hairdresser inspired highlights. That's just, that's a function of being 50.
Hey, me too, buddy. Welcome to 50. Happy birthday. I know you just had one. Colin, you're a great partner for us here at the Dean Blundell Show and Crier Media. We're really happy to have you part of what we do. Happy to talk about your story, resilience, get to know your business a little bit. And I encourage everybody that does this kind of stuff, have your friends who do something extraordinary that nobody else that you know does. Talk about them in your podcast, man. This is a great education, learning experience. And we want to introduce people to you. Great Canadian. Good man, Colin Livingston. Go to cantork.com for more information. Thanks so much for being here, brother. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Dino.
Anytime, pal. Talk to you soon. That is Colin Livingston, owner of cantork.com. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And I mean that, Renaissance man. I can get on a phone with him and we can be in the middle of a conversation about golf and we'll end on philosophy or torque wrenches. It really depends on the day. But go to cantork.com for more information. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Colin and our friends at Cantork. They make rugged, hardworking torque wrenches. We've given you the lowdown. Just go there today and check them out. And let's make sure that we support Canadian, buy Canadian, help Canadians. That is a Canadian who puts his money where his mouth is. Thanks so much for everybody for your time. Really appreciate it. You can get everything you do at Crier Media. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.